600,000 people go missing in the United States each year. Tens of thousands remain mysteriously missing.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Mysteriously Missing. I'm Justine.
Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Karen.
Today's episode we're talking about Paul, middle initial D, and last name is Paur, and it's spelled P-A-U-R. He has been missing since Thursday, June 5th of 2014.
And this episode retraces Paul's last known location near Dahlonega, Georgia, and that's about 30 miles northeast of Springer Mountain, and that's the southern terminus or southern end of the Appalachian Trail.
Now, Paul left behind all his worldly possessions and entered the Appalachian Trail in early June. Concerns about his mental health surfaced alongside reports from fellow hikers that Paul is looking for God. And, what was he really doing out there? We're not quite sure.
So when we get into this episode, the question is Paul really missing? The Charlie Project and NamUs do not list him on their sites. So Paul was from West Allis, Wisconsin, and that's a suburb of Milwaukee. He intended to hike the Appalachian Trail, which is a 14-state, 2,190-mile walk in the woods. And he ended up at the Wallaceye Interpretive Center, which is a small stone building located along US 19 and Highway 129, or also called Neal's Gap in Georgia on the eastern side of Blood Mountain.
Now, sightings of Paul had reported that he was wearing a t-shirt, shorts, flip-flops, and a sleeping bag, or he was sleeping in a trash bag. So to me, that doesn't really sound like hiking gear. I mean, flip-flops and shorts.
No, already he's not doing well.
Right. And he's described as a 50-year-old man. He's about 6 feet, maybe 6'1". He's weighing around 230 pounds, and he has brown hair and blue eyes. And hikers reported on Facebook about their encounters with Paul, who has picked up the trail name Trash Bag because that's what he was sleeping in. Paul had been labeled as depressed, schizophrenic, suicidal, and a missing person. Sheriff Mason reports, "What we've learned is that he was under psychiatric care. He has high blood pressure and won't take his medication," and Sheriff Mason said he's been diagnosed as schizophrenic.
Paul worked as a construction worker, and he has a brother, Richard, who's also from Wisconsin. Kathleen Hintz was Paul's girlfriend at the time, living in Wisconsin. Paul told his girlfriend that he was going to hike the Appalachian Trail and would be making a trip to Georgia.
So to me, he's letting people know.
He has a plan.
Right. It's not like he's trying to hide this from anyone, but he told his girlfriend, obviously, I'm going to go hike this trail.
Yes.
Now, getting into this timeline, we have a report that Paul had watched his father commit suicide when he was about 19 years old.
That's got to be tough.
Yes, and then in March of 2014, Paul attempted suicide himself. And then before venturing to the Appalachian Trail, Paul quit his job and went to the bank and withdrew $5,000. Sergeant Osborne said the last time he used his cell phone was in Cleveland. After that, it's like he just turned it off and went off the grid.
And we're assuming that when he says Cleveland, he means Cleveland, Tennessee, not Cleveland, Ohio, or Cleveland, Georgia, because Cleveland, Tennessee is the most direct route to where he entered the Appalachian Trail. Now, West Allis, Wisconsin to Cleveland, Tennessee, which he had to drive to begin his journey, was 720 miles, or about 12 hours of driving. And then Cleveland, Tennessee to the Wallaceye Interpretive Center, where he left his car, is about 70 miles or an hour and a half drive. So he did all that traveling to get to the beginning of where he was going to hike the trail.
Now, June 4th, Paul had spoken to people at Neal Gap's Mountain Crossings Outfitters, also known as the Wallaceye Interpretive Center, on Wednesday, June 4th, about leaving his car there. So he's obviously talking to people, kind of going with his plan.
Then on June 5th, around noon, it was reported he was sweaty and walked into the Wallacea Interpretive Center near Dahlonega, Georgia, about 30 miles, as we said, northeast of Springer Mountain. And again, that is the southern end of the Appalachian Trail, Springer Mountain is. And he had picked up 30 miles up he was 30 miles up the Appalachian Trail to supposedly start hiking. So instead of at the very beginning or the end, southern end, he decided to start there, it appears.
Now, he put his keys on the counter and told the clerk he'd pay her $200 if she watched his car. "How long would you be gone?" she asked, and he replied 4 to 6 months. He left his car and told them he would see them in about 6 months, and this was reported by Sheriff Mason, and then he also told them he would be back in that amount of time. So again, he has this plan, kind of this timeline in his head of what, he's going to do, and it seems like so far he's kind of following along with that plan.
Yes, but unfortunately, a few days later, hikers reported seeing a backpack in the middle of the trail about a quarter mile from the Wallacea Interpretive Center. It hadn't been moved in days. The trail isn't more than 3 feet wide, and hikers were having to walk around the backpack, and it was still there when they returned from their own hike.
Local sheriff's deputies fetched the pack and found brand new gear inside. It had hiking boots, a GoPro camera, a GPS system, a tent, and a sleeping bag. They also found a wallet containing the driver's license of 50-year-old Paul. Sergeant Darren Osborne of the Union County Sheriff's Office tracked down Paul's girlfriend outside Milwaukee. She told him that Paul had suggested he was taking a sabbatical and had withdrawn $5,000 from the bank and then split. She was frantically worried about his mental health. His girlfriend was very concerned, Sergeant Osborne said. He had prepared for a hike, but he just left it all behind. What made it even more strange was the $3,000 he left in his backpack.
And sheriff deputies launched a search for Paul and tacked missing person flyers to trees, suggesting that Paul was possibly suicidal. The posters stated, "Should you come into contact, do not approach. Also, should you come into contact with an unfamiliar odor, please mark the area and notify the Union County Sheriff's Office immediately."
Sheriff Mason, deputies, firefighters, and emergency management personnel searched an area just off the Appalachian Trail near Wallacea to no avail. I talked with the police department in his hometown, and they went to his apartment and didn't find anything that would lead them to believe that he came down here to commit suicide, and this was said by Sergeant Osborne.
In the following days, several hikers called the sheriff's office to report seeing a northbound AT hiker wearing a t-shirt, khaki shorts, and flip-flops. The man was sleeping inside a trash bag, and he said he was walking the 2,000 miles to Maine's Mount Katahdin, which is at the end of AT in the north.
So now we kind of get into some sightings of Paul. The first one was June 7th of 2014. He was seen at Deep Gap in Georgia, which is 15 miles south of the Wallacea Center.
So it appears at this time he's heading south on the trail instead of north, and maybe he was thinking he'd head back to the beginning of the trail and start, if that is an actual sighting. Then on June 8th, the next day, he was seen at Plum Orchard Gap, and that is 65 miles north on the Appalachian Trail. So I'm thinking that first sighting going south probably was not accurate. Or did he hitchhike up there?
Yeah, because 65 miles in one day.
Not possible.
Yeah, not going to happen. The next sighting was on June 10th, and he was sighted at the Standing Indian Shelter across the state line in North Carolina. One person who shared a shelter with Paul said he was reading the New Testament and talking about religion. He was saying he was trying to find God, Sergeant Osborne said, searching the pathway of the mountains.
This sighting was 9.6 miles north of Plum Orchard Gap, so he could very well have hiked that in 2 days. Paul's brother Richard joined the search from Wisconsin, calling the AT hostels and state parks. So he was trying to find him and check on if he was, staying in any of the hostels along the trail.
Now, on June 17th, Richard, which is Paul's brother, had said someone saw his brother at North Carolina's Wesser Bald in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. This is roughly 100 trail miles from where he had started.
That is also 20 miles north of Standing Indian Shelter, so he could have hiked that 29 miles in 7 days.
They sat around the fire and talked 4 or 5 hours, Richard says. They said he was carrying a black duffel bag with a few aluminum pots. The hikers, concerned that Paul was unprepared, offered him about a week's worth of food, which he willingly accepted. My level of concern is to make sure he's got what he needs, Richard says. His brother is strong, weighs around 230 pounds, and is an avid hunter and fisherman.
I wonder if he found those pots along the trail, some hikers unloading their gear, not wanting to carry.
Possibly, yeah.
Sergeant Osborne still considers the missing person case open and has contacted officials farther north. But law enforcement may not have any authority to force Paul off the trail, even if a report had him walking barefoot. They could try to get him some help. If they feel like he's mentally capable to continue on, they'll let him.
Word of Paul's unusual journey has spread through the trail community, and reactions have run the gamut. Some say Paul needs help if he's mentally unstable. Others say he's come to the right place to find what he's looking for. So now, Sunday, June 22nd, this is still in 2014, a couple reported that in the Sobo section, hikers traveling from the Nantahala Outdoor Center to Springer Mountain encountered Paul along the way. Paul alarmed the young man, but not the lady. Yes, Paul seemed troubled, unprepared, rambling about religion, and odd even among the odd ones on the trail.
And that's 5.5 miles north of Wesser Bald, where he was last seen on June 17th, or 5 days earlier. So he was still heading north on the AT at that time.
So that's kind of basically the end of the timeline. We didn't have a lot of information on him besides these sightings that people have been reporting. But I mean, even the pictures, if you're watching this on YouTube, we only had like 1, maybe 2 pictures of him, I believe, that...
And there's no recent information. It's a possibility he's still living out there in the wilderness. As they said, he had some survival skills. The trouble is, can you yank someone off the trail, if they have mental health issues? Or does he have a right to live out there as long as he's not harming other folks?
That's what I was thinking. He's out there kind of clearing his head maybe, and as long as he's not hurting anyone, I don't think they can really do anything about it.
And I imagine his brother would like to get some affirmation of where he is or what exactly is going on if he is still surviving out there. So hopefully one day there'll be some resolve on this case.
I do kind of question, though, why would he leave his girlfriend? I mean, I don't know how serious they were, but... you go out and hike, and then wouldn't you want to come back to your family? And
yeah, but maybe he found his comfort out there because he was suicidal. He did have mental health issues, and he, sometimes the wilderness can offer that peace for people.
Right.
So if you have any information, you can contact Sergeant Osborne at 706-439-6066.
And if you guys have any requests on different cases, we only try and cover cases in the United States. But if you have any requests, please email us at mysteriously411@gmail.com. We would love to hear of, cases we haven't really found yet that we can kind of piece together for you. But you can always check out our Instagram page, Mysteriously Missing. We post videos on YouTube with pictures and maps just to kind of give you that backstory of the case we're talking about. But we're just kind of, concerned about Paul, and we want to make sure his mental health is, number one priority. And
it would be nice to have some closure. What did happen to this man, and is he still with us?
Yeah, I mean, since 2014.
It's a little tougher.
It does. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you.